Colossians chapter 2, verse 15. Christ disarmed the principalities and powers and made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them. That word triumph is a technical term. A Roman triumph was the victory parade through the capital after a decisive military conquest. The defeated enemies marched in chains behind the military general. So, if the cross was a triumph, why does the empire look like it lost? This is the question this episode exists to answer. Welcome to Episode 6 of The War Before the World. Episode 5 built the full architecture, 3 rebellions. 4 tiers, the prison system, the declaration at Caesarea Philippi, and it ended with Colossians 2:15. The verdict was rendered. The cross was the decisive battle. Episode 5's NTs pointed at Armageddon, at what happens at the final confrontation. But before we can go there, we need to understand what is running right now. Because the ending of this story only makes sense if you understand what the operation looks like in the middle of it. Before we get into it, if you are not subscribed yet, please hit that button. This series is worth staying for. Okay, back to the video. Here is the distinction that most preaching never draws. There is a difference between a legal verdict and a lived reality. In 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. The legal fact changed instantly. The economic and social reality that had been built on top of that institution did not change overnight. The law had spoken. The system had not yet been fully dismantled. The New Testament makes a structurally similar claim about the Dark Kingdom. Colossians 2:15 is the verdict rendered at the cross. Revelation chapter 20 describes his final binding, which has not yet occurred. Between those two events, every New Testament letter assumes an active operation, reduced in authority, permanently defeated, but not yet removed from the field. And the New Testament is specific, more specific than most churches teach about what that operation looks like. The first strategy is in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. Paul calls him the God of this age and gives him a specific job, blinding the minds of unbelievers so they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ. Most people read that and think, okay, the devil makes people not believe in God, but Paul is saying something more precise than that. He is describing an interference mechanism. The gospel is not rejected primarily because it is intellectually implausible. Paul is saying the inability to perceive it is engineered. There is something operating between the message and the mind receiving it. The God of this age is running that interference. But here is the detail most people miss. Paul does not say he blinds believers. He says he blinds unbelievers, which means the operation is targeted specifically at the entry point. At the moment, a person first encounters the truth, and this connects directly to what Episode 5 described at the cosmic radar level. Not individual demons assigned to individual minds, a structure operating at the level of what an entire culture treats as obviously true. So the gospel sounds implausible before anyone has examined it seriously. The second strategy is in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. He disguises himself as an angel of light. The first strategy targets people outside the faith. This one targets people inside it. False teaching, distorted doctrine, things that sound almost right but contain a specific deviation that hollows out the center. Paul's context in chapter 11 is directly about false apostles, people who present themselves as servants of righteousness, not obviously dark, superficially bright. Let me give you an example. A man named Josiah grew up in a church where the prosperity gospel was preached with Bible verses. Every single verse was real. The promises were real. The framing was the deviation. He gave for a decade. When his wife got sick and the promises did not materialize, he left the faith entirely, not because he rejected God, because he had been given a version of God designed by someone who looked like an angel of light. The counterfeit is always more dangerous than the obvious enemy, because the counterfeit gets past every defense that was built against the obvious one. Before we go further, if this series is doing something for you, subscribe and share this episode with someone carrying these questions. The series is the argument. They need all of it. Now, back to the strategies. The third strategy is in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. A roaring lion, prowling around, looking for someone to devour. Peter's instruction: be sober-minded and watchful. There is an implication in that image that almost nobody talks about. A lion does not attack the strong. It targets the weak, the isolated, the wounded, the one that fell behind the group, which means the prowling strategy is not random. It is targeted. Who is most vulnerable to an enemy looking for someone to devour? The grieving, the exhausted, the person walking through something alone because they have not told anyone. The prowling lion is designed to find you in the moment you have the least resistance. This is why the New Testament treats community as a defensive structure, not a preference. The scattered sheep is the one that gets taken. The fourth strategy is in John chapter 8, verse 44. Jesus says, "He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies." Father of lies, not just a liar. The originator of the entire category. Here is what that means for strategy. A master liar does not tell obvious lies. A master liar tells truths with one thing changed. The original offer in the garden was almost entirely accurate. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. That part was true. Their eyes were opened. The knowledge came, but the framing was engineered to produce a choice that would destroy them. The father of lies operates in the gap between what is technically accurate and what is actually happening. The most effective lies contain about 90% truth. The deviation is small and always strategic. A cult does not begin with absurdity. It begins with something real and slowly changes the one thing that changes everything. Now, those are 4 strategies. But the New Testament also describes something larger than individual tactics. 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. John describes what he calls the world, not the physical earth, a system, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. John says these did not come from the Father. He is describing an architecture of desire, a framework engineered to redirect human appetite away from God and toward everything that will not satisfy. The hierarchy from episode 5 is still running. The cosmic raiders are still shaping what an era considers normal and desirable and obviously true. The archai are still managing civilizations toward or away from the knowledge of God over centuries. The foot soldiers are still finding the isolated, the wounded, the person who fell behind. The cross permanently defeated the commander and removed his legal authority over those who are in Christ. But the hierarchy is still operating under a general who knows the war is already decided. This is the moment in the video I want to stop at, because the most important operation, the one that the New Testament returns to most specifically, is not the blinding strategy, not the counterfeit, not even the prowling. It is in Revelation chapter 12, verse 10. After the accuser is cast out of heaven, after the decisive moment when his position in the divine council is terminated, what is he described as having been doing? Accusing them before our God day and night. Day and night, not occasionally, continuously, around the clock. There is something operating specifically in the divine council, day and night, presenting a case against believers. The accusation is not that they are doing evil. The accusation is that they do not belong, that their failures disqualify them, that the legal standing they claim is not actually theirs. This is the most ancient strategy he has, because it works entirely through true facts. You did fail. You did sin. You did not follow through on what you promised. Every piece of evidence the accuser presents is accurate. Now read Romans chapter 8, verses 33 and 34. Who will bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? Paul is answering a question, and the question he is answering, the specific one, is the question the accuser raises day and night in the divine council. The condemnation you feel after failure, the voice that says you are not actually one of them, that your prayers are not reaching anyone, that you have disqualified yourself. That is the oldest operation running. It works through the truth of your actual failures and carries a conclusion the cross already answered. Paul's answer is not to try harder, not to feel less condemned, not to behave better until the feeling passes. The answer is a question thrown back. Who is to condemn? The one who died for them is now the one interceding for them. The same act that ended the accusation is also the answer to it. This is why the cross is not just historically significant. It is actively relevant right now to a prosecution that is running against you right now. The operation is still active. The verdict is already in, and the one who holds the verdict is also the advocate. In the final episode, episode 7, this series arrives at its ending. What happens at Armageddon? What the abyss and the lake of fire mean? And the question that has been underneath this whole investigation, does he know he has already lost? If this is something someone in your life needs, send it to them. You do not need to say anything, just send it. That is how this channel reaches people. Subscribe if you have not already. I drop a new one every week. And if you want everything behind this series, every source, every argument that didn't make the runtime, the research document is on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. Link in the description.